I want to start off with a little bit of a disclaimer for this video. With some buddies of mine, I got a joke about the main character of these two Terrifier movies, Art the Clown. There was one point where a buddy of mine misheard uh, the character's name as Arthur Clown instead of Art the Clown. And it's wormed its way into my head to the point that there's a point in Terrifier 2 where Art writes his name on a mirror, and I said, wait, he didn't finish his name. His name is Arthur. So if I ever say Arthur Clown instead of Art the Clown, uh, just just ignore it. It's a funny joke to me, and it's stuck in my head. Anyways, let's talk about Terrifier 2. If you have noticed, I have not talked about the first Terrifier. I planned to at some point, but then it was such a gap in between seeing the first one and this one that I just kind of gave up. So I guess I should say about the first Terrifier, I think it's okay. I feel like the most standout thing about it is the over-the-top violence and gore. It's also really well done, but I think the actual writing and the plotting of the characters and all that is pretty bad, but I can forgive that because I'm going to see a slasher movie about a clown that brutally kills people, so I'll give it a pass on that. There was a 4-year gap between 1 and 2. I believe that the GoFundMe campaign for Terrifier 2 is one of the most successful like campaigns ever for a movie. And just for I'm gonna run through some of like the actual statistics to prove like how big this was for horror indies like this. The budget for this was $250,000, and this movie went viral when it played in theaters last year because there were reports of people passing out and vomiting during screenings of this. There was one there was one picture where someone was in a wheelchair like outside of the auditorium, and it had a poster for the movie. And honestly, it felt doctored for the movie itself. And look, obviously, I hope that person's okay now, but it's it's a funny picture to say the least. It even got to the point where when it released in Australia, the Australian government had to put out a warning for this movie on social media to to say just like, hey, this movie's really violent and it's really gory. So just like we gotta say that now in case you go see this. And whether it's because of the viral reports or just overall support for this little indie movie that could, it made $10 million on a $250,000 budget, which makes that one of the most, to my knowledge, one of the most successful indie horror movies ever, which is fantastic. I think that really independent horror has hit a boom recently. I talked about that when I reviewed Skinamarink and The Outwaters, and I'm very happy that like a genre that I love, especially ones that are very like especially movies and things that are doing stuff that is way out there and their own thing, are getting pretty big audiences now. So I've talked about how viral this went. I talked about how much money this made for an independent horror movie. I talked about just how a lot of people fell in love with this movie. No, it's not perfect. I don't think it's perfect, but I understand why people have fallen in love with this movie and Arthur Clown. But what do I think of it? I feel like that's been a big thing. Is like I've been waiting to see it. It was on a horror streaming service called Screambox, but now they have a deal with Amazon. So right now, Terrifier 2 is streaming on Amazon Prime if you have that. But what do I think about this? I've been excited to watch this. I really have been, and I think it's basically on the same level as the first one. Again, what I think stands out here the most is the violence and the special effects and the gore and makeup of all of that, because it's pretty clear that outside of maybe some production design choices, this is where all that money went to, because this is some mind-altering stuff when it comes to the gore here. Not to spoil anything, but there is a specific, like, standout scene, like, the standout scene of the movie to me is someone on a bed. And I'm not gonna spoil it from there because like there's just some things you gotta see to believe that they did. And for an indie movie, this is so impressive. Just it, it got me to the point where I pretty much got very close to throwing up during this because it looked that realistic. I will say the plot and the writing is better in this than the first one. I do like Lauren LaVera as Sierra. I think that was a pretty cool like main character to follow. And on top of that, the writing was good. I feel like a lot of the other side characters just felt more annoying than anything. But it felt like Sierra or Sienna. I'm thinking it was Sierra. I'm gonna check that real quick. It's Sienna, and it was a very good character to follow. And I feel like out of all the other characters that were in this movie, it felt like it made the most sense that we were following Sienna in this. Also, I felt the same way in the first one about this, but I really like David Howard Thornton as Art, the clown. I feel like I can't just say Art. I have to say Art the Clown, or I sometimes say Arthur Clown. But just he is such a good visual performer. Art doesn't speak in the same way as the first one. Art does not speak in this one, but he is just a funny guy to watch. Like you are watching this guy brutalize people, and like they're not shying away from it. They're not cutting away from the camera. Like he is brutalizing these people, but it kind of feels like you're watching something out of Mr. Bean. And he's very entertaining to watch. Like even when he's not killing people, he's very expressive, and I feel like that's part of the appeal of the first two movies. He's such an appealing little guy to watch. However, this movie is so long. The first one was like a little less than an hour and a half. It doesn't overstay its welcome. I appreciated that. This thing is way too long. I probably could have cut out at least 30 to 45 minutes of this that I just didn't think was needed. And honestly, I wouldn't have minded if all of Terrifier 2 was just Sienna and Arthur just fighting each other. And I still think it would have been fun. However, I do respect the ambition that the director Damien Leone is trying to do, and just making something that really hasn't like been tried on this scale before, at least when it comes to indie horror. Also, Chris Jericho is in this. It doesn't have to do with the plot. Chris Jericho's in this, and it's pretty jarring to see him as much as I like him. But I don't know, just had to point that out. So yeah, I guess those are my thoughts on Terrifier 2. I had a lot of fun watching this. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. Granted, there is a reason why the Australian government literally put out, hey, this is violent, okay? Just know what you're getting into. But yeah, no, this was a pretty disgusting movie, but it was also pretty fun in a vile sort of way. I'm fine with giving Terrifier 2 a 7 out of 10. I feel like it would have been a little higher if it was just shorter, because there were just parts of this that just really, there were just parts of this that weren't needed, but I respect the ambition. There are just parts I'm going to skip to, though, if I ever watch this again. I was going to ask a question to you guys, if you guys like Terrifier 2, but over here, it's really nice out. It's like 80 degrees today where I am, so I'm going to go out on a walk. I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya!